In this video, you will see how to model a new curtain wall, how to swap existing basic walls for curtain walls, and we'll see how to edit the type properties of a curtain wall to control the position of grid lines and mullions. A curtain wall is a type of wall that encloses the exterior of the building but does not carry any structural load. They are fixed to the structure to make the building weathertight and are often made up of panels and mullions, with the panels being a mix of solid and glazed materials, with the glazed materials allowing the light to come into the building. I have the exercise file Create Curtain Walls open. Zooming into the atrium at the end of the building, we can see the location where the curtain wall is required. It will be easier to create the curtain wall accurately by sketching in a plan view. So from the project browser, I'll open the floor plan view, floor 1. And then to help see the curtain wall as it's created, I'll go to the View ribbon tab, and from the Windows panel, I'll use the Tile Windows tool so that we can see both the 2D plan and the 3D view on the screen simultaneously. So we just need to adjust the view so we can see where the curtain wall needs to be created in both views. And now to create the curtain wall, first we'll make sure the plan view is active, and then from the Architecture ribbon tab on the Build panel, we'll select the Wall tool. Looking at the type selector, we can see we have the basic wall exterior brick on CMU selected. So from the type selector, we'll scroll down and then we can see we have the curtain wall families, and then we'll choose the curtain wall glazing type to use in this instance. Looking at the options bar above, we can see the height and it's connected to floor 2. We'll change this to floor 4. The location line is not relevant on a curtain wall. However, at the end of the options bar, we'll change the join status to disallow so it doesn't join and connect up with the existing walls we have modelled. Now looking at the sketching tools above, we can see we have it set to draw a straight line. So in the floor plan view, we'll just zoom into this end of the wall here and we'll click on the end of this wall. And then panning across to the other side, we can snap to the end of the opposite wall. And having done that, we can see that we've created a curtain wall, and it's visible in both the plan view and 3D view. However, it's just one very large panel of glass, and we'd like to have it divided into smaller panels. So to do this, we'll need to click Modify to stop creating the curtain wall, and then we'll reselect it, and from the top of the Properties palette, we'll choose Edit Type to access its type properties. Looking in here, we can see we have the panel for vertical and horizontal grid, and the layout is both set to none, hence we have no grid lines. But before we make any changes, we'll make a duplicate of this curtain wall type to create a new one. So next to the type name, we'll choose Duplicate, and then we'll assign in the name Curtain Wall Panels. And click OK to create this new type. Now, next to the Layout parameter in the Vertical Grid panel, we'll click None, and we can see we have a number of options to specify how the grid lines would be set out. We'll select the Fixed Distance option, and then we'll set the spacing parameter below to be 6 feet, which will give us grid lines 6 feet apart along the length of our curtain wall. For the horizontal layout, we'll also choose Fixed Distance, and set the spacing parameter to be 15 feet, which will give us horizontal grid lines 15 feet apart, starting from the bottom of the wall and working upwards. Now click OK to save those changes, and we can see that applied now to the curtain wall. We can see the grid lines 6 feet apart going across the curtain wall and up the curtain wall every 15 feet as we specified in the properties. Looking at the end of the curtain wall, we can see we have a small panel, and this is because the length of the curtain wall does not divide perfectly into 6 feet panels, and therefore we have a smaller panel left over at the end. We can choose where this appears. Looking at the Properties palette, we can see in the Vertical Grid panel that we have a justification parameter, and it's set to beginning. Hence the 6 feet panels have started where we started to draw the curtain wall, and we have the odd bit left at the end. We can change this justification. We could choose End, which would swap it to the start of the curtain wall, but we'll choose Center Justification, and then we can see the panels are set out from the middle of the curtain wall, and we have two slightly smaller panels at either end of the wall. Looking at the horizontal grid lines spreading up the curtain wall, you can see we also have a smaller panel at the top. And we could use an alternative way to set these grid lines out. So whilst it's still selected, we'll click Edit Type from the Properties palette to access those type properties again. And in the horizontal grid panel, I'll change the layout parameter from fixed distance to fixed number. When we do this, we can see that the spacing parameter is now grayed out, as this will be controlled by the number of grid lines that we choose for each individual curtain wall. I'll click OK to apply these changes. And now straight away I can see that we have equally sized panels going up the curtain wall. And looking at the Properties palette, we can see on the horizontal grid panel that we now have the number parameter active. And I can adjust the number of grid lines, so if I increase this to say 7 and apply it, we can see that we have a lot of smaller panels spreading up the wall. Or I'll adjust it down to 2, and now when we apply this we can see we have 2 grid lines, which will give us 3 larger panels equally spaced on this wall. I'll close down the Plan View tab now, so we have just the exterior perspective view open. And we can see that we have the curtain wall, which is the host for the curtain grid lines, and also the glazed panel, with the curtain grid lines being used to create the multiple panels within the wall. The mullion family can also be specified in the type properties to be placed along the curtain grid lines. To do this, let's select the curtain wall and then click Edit Type to access the type properties once more. So now looking at the type parameters, we can see we have panels for vertical mullions and horizontal mullions. We have parameters for the interior and the border mullions, and currently they're all set to be none. So I'll click none, and then from the list of available mullions, we'll assign in the rectangular mullion 2.5 inch by 5 inch rectangular. We need to do this for all of the different mullions. So once we've got that complete, we can then click OK, and those mullions will be applied to the outside of the curtain wall and also between all of the panels. So now we just want the curtain wall to extend up to the roof. So to do this, we'll select the curtain wall, and then from the Modify Walls ribbon tab, choose the Attach Top Base tool. In the options bar, we can see that it's set to attach the top of the wall. So now we just need to click the roof, and then we can see that the curtain wall is extended up to the roof. However, we've got a warning message that we can't ignore, and it's letting us know that the previous set of mullions that were on the top of the curtain wall need to be deleted. So we'll click Delete Elements, and now we can see our curtain wall extending up to the underside of the roof, with the mullions now following the line of the roof. So that finishes that curtain wall. And now panning round to the end of the atrium here, we can see we have a curtain wall on this end elevation. If I select this, we can see it's the curtain wall type glazed panels 5 foot by 8 foot. So from the type selector, we'll click and change it to the curtain wall panels type that we've just created. And now we can see from the Properties palette, we can change the horizontal grid number, so we'll change this to 2. And once that's applied, we can see that update in the model, showing us how we can swap between different curtain wall types and adjust their parameters. We can also do this to basic walls, so zooming out and panning around to the tower in the model here, we can see we have these basic walls, and I'll select all of them just using the control key to multiple select them. And now they're selected, in the top of the properties we can see they are basic walls of multiple types. If we click this type selector, we can choose a curtain wall type, so we'll choose the curtain wall panels that we've just created. And then we can see this has been applied to those basic walls, and they now have the panels and the mullions as we set up in the type properties. We can also see from the horizontal grid panel we can adjust the number, so I'll change this to 3, and again we can see that update on these walls that have now been changed into a curtain wall. So this shows us how we can create different design options quickly using that technique.